$20 million. That is exactly what my husband, Richard, stole while I was away saving his company. I returned at 6 in the morning to find a blonde stranger in my silk blouse tossing an apron at my face. She thought I was the new nanny. Big mistake. Richard thinks he is safe, but within 72 hours, I will strip him of his fortune, reputation, and freedom, all while serving him the bitterest coffee of his life. My name is Elizabeth Ashburn, and at 38 years old, I have learned that the most dangerous place in the world is not a boardroom filled with hostile shareholders, nor is it the dimly lit back room of an offshore bank in the Caymans, where I had spent the last 15 days hunting down the ghost of my family fortune. No, the most dangerous place on earth is the kitchen of your own home when you realize you no longer belong there. I stood at the edge of the property line of our estate in the Hamptons. The sun was barely bleeding over the horizon, casting a pale, gray light over the manicured hedges and the sprawling limestone structure that Richard liked to call his castle. It was 6 in the morning. My body felt like it was made of lead and old wire. The flight back had been brutal. A red-eye cargo hop followed by a rental car drive that left my spine aching. I looked nothing like the woman who graced the cover of Forbes last month. I was wearing a pair of gray sweatpants that had seen better days, a baggy university hoodie stained with airplane coffee, and sneakers that were covered in the dust of 3 different countries. My hair, usually a sleek, dark curtain of authority, was pulled back in a messy, frizzy knot, and my face was bare, revealing the dark circles carved by sleep deprivation and the grim reality of what I had discovered. Richard, my husband of 10 years, and the man currently acting as CEO of the company my father built, had been busy. While I was away ostensibly attending a wellness retreat, a cover story I had planted with meticulous care, I had actually been following a paper trail of $20 million, money he had siphoned from our accounts, money meant for research and development, money that was now sitting in a shell company account that I had finally identified just 48 hours ago. I let myself in through the side service entrance. The heavy oak door clicked shut silently behind me, the sound of the latch engaging echoing like a gunshot in the quiet house. I expected silence. I expected the stale air of an empty house, or perhaps the faint snoring of a husband who missed his wife. What I found was the smell of expensive French vanilla candles and the soft hum of someone humming a pop song I did not recognize. I walked down the long hallway, my sneakers squeaking faintly on the marble. The kitchen opened up before me, a vast expanse of white granite and stainless steel appliances that cost more than most people earned in a decade. And there she was. Standing by the island was a woman I had never met. She was young, perhaps 24 or 25, with hair the color of spun gold cascading down her back in perfect, glossy waves. But it was not her hair that made my breath hitch in my throat. It was what she was wearing. She was draped in a silk robe, my silk robe. It was a limited edition piece, a deep emerald green commissioned from a designer in Milan, with my initials, EA, embroidered discreetly on the cuff. I had worn it exactly twice. Now, it hung loosely off her slender shoulders, shimmering in the morning light. She turned around as I stepped fully into the room. Her eyes were blue, wide, and currently filled with a mixture of surprise and haughty irritation. She scanned me from head to toe, her gaze lingering on my dirty sneakers and the grease stain on my hoodie. She did not see Elizabeth Ashburn, the heiress to Northwood Tech. She did not see the woman who owned the deed to the floor she was standing on. She saw a tired, middle-aged woman in rags. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. I waited for the panic, for the realization, for the awkward, stammering apology. Instead, she sighed, a sound of profound annoyance. "Finally," she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. She reached onto the counter, grabbed a folded apron, and tossed it through the air. It landed at my feet with a soft slap. "The agency said you would be here by 5:30. You are late." I stared at the apron. It was a simple white thing, usually worn by the catering staff we hired for parties. My brain took a moment to recalibrate. She did not know who I was. Of course she did not. Why would she? Richard had likely told her his wife was away, perhaps for weeks, and looking as I did, I certainly did not look like the mistress of the house. Well, she snapped, snapping her fingers in front of her face. Do not just stand there staring like a cow. Pick it up. Richard specifically asked for the new nanny to be efficient. He hates having to repeat himself. The new nanny. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Richard had replaced me, not just in his bed, but in the household. He had told me he was going to hire someone to help with Maya when she returned from summer camp, but I had insisted on interviewing them myself. Clearly, he had decided to bypass my authority entirely. Coffee? The girl Bella. I would later learn her name was Bella commanded, pointing a manicured finger toward the espresso machine that looked like the cockpit of a spaceship, and set the table. Richard wakes up at 7 o'clock sharp, and if his caffeine isn't ready, he gets grumpy. We don't want him grumpy, do we? My blood ran cold, then hot, then froze entirely. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. This stranger, standing in my kitchen, wearing my clothes, ordering me to serve my husband. My first instinct was to laugh. My second was to lunge across the island and tear that robe off her body. But I did neither. I was a businesswoman. I dealt in leverage, in strategy, in long games. If I revealed myself now, what would happen? A screaming match. Richard would come down, deny everything, claim she was a guest, gaslight me into submission, or worse, realize I knew about the money and accelerate his plans to disappear. He would have the advantage of knowing I was on to him. But right now, I was invisible. I was a ghost. I was a fly on the wall in the very room where the conspiracy against me was unfolding. Slowly, deliberately, I bent down and picked up the apron. The fabric felt coarse against my fingers. I tied it around my waist, the knot tight against my spine. I apologize, ma'am, I said, my voice dropping an octave, adopting a rougher, flatter cadence than my usual polished transatlantic accent. Traffic coming out from the city was terrible. It won't happen again. Bella rolled her eyes and turned back to her reflection in the darkened window of the oven, adjusting her hair. Make sure it doesn't, and try to look a little more presentable tomorrow. God, is that what you're wearing to greet Mr. Ashburn? Stay out of his direct line of sight. He likes pretty things. I walked to the coffee machine. My hands knew the movements by heart grind. Tamp, lock, brew, but I performed them with a newfound, servile stiffness. The machine hissed, masking the sound of my own heart hammering against my ribs. I was setting the table for my own execution, or so she thought. In reality, I was setting the stage for a war. 2 cups, I asked, keeping my back to her. Obviously, she scoffed, hopping up to sit on the counter, her legs swinging carelessly. 1 black, 1 with oat milk, and 2 pumps of caramel. And get the good china, the stuff with the gold rim. My grandmother's china. I pulled the plates down from the upper cabinet, my movements mechanical. Every instinct screamed at me to smash the porcelain against the wall. Instead, I laid them out on the breakfast nook table, fork on the left, knife on the right, napkin folded into a perfect swan, a trick I had learned during a summer job in college, a lifetime ago. He is coming, Bella hissed, jumping off the counter and smoothing the silk robe over her hips. Look busy. I heard the heavy footsteps on the stairs before I saw him. Richard walked with a heavy tread, the walk of a man who believes he owns the earth beneath his feet. He entered the kitchen, his eyes glued to his phone, his thumb scrolling furiously through emails. He was wearing his navy blue silk pajamas, the ones I had bought him for our 5th anniversary. He looked well-rested, healthy, not a man whose wife had been missing for half a month. Market is opening down, he muttered, not looking up. I need to call Henderson before the bell. He walked straight past me. I was standing by the sink, my head bowed, my hair falling forward to curtain my face. I scrubbed at a spot on the counter that was already clean. To him, I was furniture. I was a utility. I was the help. Bella glided over to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. Good morning, Handsome. Put the phone away. Richard looked up then, a smile breaking across his face that I hadn't seen directed at me in 3 years. He dropped the phone on the table and pulled her close, burying his face in her neck. You smell good. Better than the stale air in this house usually smells. I gripped the edge of the sink so hard, my knuckles turned white. Your new nanny is here, Bella said, gesturing vaguely in my direction with a flick of her wrist. She was late, and she looks like she crawled out of a dumpster, but she makes decent coffee. Richard didn't even turn his head. He just waved a hand dismissively in my direction. As long as she keeps Maya out of my hair when the kid gets back, I don't care if she looks like a troll. Is the coffee ready? Almost, sir, I said, keeping my voice low and muffled. I poured the steaming dark liquid into the cup. Bring it here, Richard commanded. Pulling out a chair and sitting down, Bella sat on his lap, giggling. So, Bella traced a finger down his chest. When is she coming back? You said she'd be gone for a while. I froze. The pot of coffee hovering over the second cup. This was it. The truth. Richard laughed. A cruel, dry sound. Elizabeth God. Who knows? She is off on some ridiculous spiritual journey to find herself, probably sitting on a mountain in Peru pretending to be deep. The woman is a bore. Bella, a total bore. She has no idea how to enjoy life. All she cares about are spreadsheets and legacy. But she is coming back. Bella pouted. Not for long, Richard said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that I could hear perfectly clearly in the silence of the kitchen. I told you, babe, we are separated in all but name. As soon as I finalize this merger next week, I'm moving her out. I've got a nice little condo picked out for her in Jersey. She can rot there with her cats. This house, this life, it's going to be ours. I felt a cold, sharp clarity settle over me. It was not sorrow. It was not heartbreak. Those emotions were for women who had something to lose. I realized, in that moment, standing 5 feet away from the man I had vowed to love and cherish, that I had nothing left to lose. He had taken the money. He had taken the house. He had taken the marriage. But he had made one fatal error. He had underestimated my capacity for survival. I placed the coffee cup down in front of him. My hand did not shake. Your coffee, sir, I said. Thanks, he grunted, reaching for the mug without looking at me. Hey, what's your name again? The agency sent a file, but I didn't read it. I straightened up, just a fraction. I kept my chin tucked, my eyes lowered, my hair obscuring the familiar angles of my cheekbones. I needed a name that was close enough to the truth to be a private joke, but far enough away to keep me safe. Eliza, I said softly. My name is Eliza, sir. Eliza, Richard tested the name, taking a sip of the coffee. He grimaced slightly. A bit bitter. Next time, use less grounds. I hate bitter coffee. I will keep that in mind, sir, I replied. I specialize in bitter things. He didn't catch the double meaning. He was too busy nuzzling into Bella's neck, his hand sliding down the back of my robe. Go clean the living room or something. Richard waved me away. And stay out of earshot. We have adult things to discuss. Yes, sir, I said. I backed out of the kitchen, taking the tray with me. As I walked backward, I watched them. They looked like a picture-perfect couple in a magazine advertisement for a life of leisure. They were laughing, confident, secure in their victory. They thought the queen was dead. They thought the castle was undefended. I walked into the hallway and leaned against the wall, listening to their laughter fade. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling now, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I had 72 hours before the merger he mentioned, which I knew was actually the final transfer of the embezzled funds. 72 hours to dismantle a decade of lies. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of my own home, which now smelled like a battlefield. Coffee, I whispered to myself, mimicking Bella's command. Set the table, I smiled. It was a terrifying expression, one that bared my teeth but did not reach my eyes. I would set the table. All right, I would set it for a feast of consequences that they would never be able to digest. I turned and walked silently toward the maids' quarters. It was time to go to work. I slipped into the maids' quarters located just off the kitchen pantry. It was a cramped, windowless space that smelled faintly of lemon furniture polish and stale lavender. This room was a relic of the estate's original architecture, a space designed for people who were meant to be summoned, not seen. I had kept the spare key hidden behind a loose brick in the pantry wall for emergencies. Thinking of fire or power outages, never imagining the emergency would be the collapse of my entire life. Inside, I moved with the efficiency of a soldier preparing for guerrilla warfare. I stripped off my travel-worn hoodie and sweatpants. In the small closet, I found what I was looking for. We kept a stock of generic uniforms for temporary staff, usually for large dinner parties. I pulled out a gray cotton dress that was 2 sizes too big. It hung on my frame like a sack, obliterating the curves that Richard used to claim were his favorite landscape. I pulled my hair back so tightly it pulled at my temples, securing it with a severe black elastic band. I found a pair of thick-rimmed reading glasses in a drawer. Left behind by a housekeeper 3 years ago, I slid them on. The world blurred slightly at the edges, but when I looked in the small, warped mirror above the sink, Elizabeth Ashburn, the heiress to the Northwood Tech empire, had vanished. In her place stood Eliza, a woman of indeterminate age, invisible, harmless, and dull. The transformation was not just physical, it was a necessary psychological descent. I had to bury the CEO. I had to bury the woman who commanded a boardroom of 50 men. Northwood Tech was my father's legacy, but I was the one who had turned it into a global powerhouse in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Richard was a project. I met him when he was a mid-level sales manager with a charming smile and a cheap suit. I polished him. I taught him which fork to use. I rewrote his speeches. I put him in the CEO chair because I wanted to focus on the technology, the soul of the company. While he played the face, I thought we were partners. I thought he was the kite, and I was the string. I was wrong. He was a parasite. My mind flashed back to the humid, suffocating heat of the Cayman Islands 3 days ago, while Richard thought I was meditating in a yurt in Sedona. I was sitting in a lawyer's office in Georgetown, staring at bank statements that made my stomach turn. He wasn't just skimming off the top. He was gutting the company. He was selling our proprietary algorithms, my algorithms, to our biggest competitor, a firm called PEX Dynamics, and that was where Bella came in. As I walked out of the maid's room, a feather duster in hand, I heard Bella's voice drifting from the living room. She was on the phone, her voice shrill and excited. "Daddy, he is going to sign it. Yes, Friday. He says the wife is totally out of the picture. She is some frigid workaholic who doesn't even know what day it is." I paused, pressing myself against the wall. Bella wasn't just a random affair. She was the daughter of Marcus Vane, the owner of Apex Dynamics. Richard was sleeping with the enemy's daughter to seal a deal that would sell my life's work for pennies on the dollar, leaving me with a bankrupt shell while they ran off with the intellectual property. I walked into the living room, keeping my head down. Bella was lounging on my Italian leather sofa, her feet propped up on the coffee table. "Hey, you," she called out, not bothering to look away from her phone. "Eliza, right?" "Yes, ma'am," I mumbled. "Go up to the master bedroom. There is a pile of laundry on the floor. Hand wash it. And be careful. It is silk. Richard says his ex-wife ruined everything she touched because she was too cheap to hire proper help. Can you believe that a billionaire who washes her own clothes because she is stingy?" I felt a muscle in my jaw jump. Richard told her I was cheap. I was the one who paid off his student loans. I was the one who bought his mother a house in Florida so she wouldn't have to live in a trailer. The audacity was so immense it was almost impressive. "I will take care of it, ma'am," I said. I went upstairs, the door to the master bedroom. My bedroom was open. The bed was unmade. A tangle of sheets that smelled of his cologne and her cloying. Floral perfume. It was a violation so personal it felt like physical nausea. but I had a job to do. I wasn't just here to clean. I reached into the deep pocket of my apron and pulled out 4 tiny black discs. They were listening devices, prototypes from my own R&D lab. Smaller than a dime and with a battery life of 300 hours, I moved to Richard's home office, which adjoined the bedroom. He had changed the lock on the door, installing a new biometric keypad. He thought this would keep me out. He forgot that I wrote the base code for the security architecture this house ran on. I didn't need a fingerprint. I punched in a service override code that I had embedded in the system 5 years ago. 0911199. The lock clicked open with a submissive beep. The office was a mess of papers and empty Scotch glasses. I moved quickly. I placed one bug under the mahogany desk, stuck with adhesive. Another went behind the curtain rod. The third I slipped behind the frame of the portrait of us on our wedding day, a photo he hadn't bothered to take down, likely because it made him look like a family man to investors. I sat down at his computer. The screen was locked. I tried his usual password. Incorrect. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried Bella's birthday, which I had memorized from her social media profile during my flight home. Access granted. The idiocy of the man was staggering. I didn't have much time. I inserted a USB drive and began a mirror copy of his hard drive. While the progress bar crawled across the screen, I opened his email. There were drafts of emails to the board of directors, forging my digital signature on documents authorizing the sale of key assets. He wasn't just stealing, he was framing me for the liquidation. He wanted to make it look like I had lost my mind and sold the company in a manic episode. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I yanked the USB drive out, barely waiting for the eject confirmation. I wiped the keyboard with my apron and slipped out of the office, closing the door just as Richard came around the corner. He stopped, looking at me with suspicion. I froze, making my posture slump, looking as pathetic as possible. "What were you doing in there?" he barked. "Cleaning, sir," I said, my voice trembling. "The lady said to clean everywhere." Richard narrowed his eyes. He looked at the door, then back at me. He didn't see the brilliant engineer who had designed his fortune. He saw a frightened servant in a gray dress. "Stay out of my office," he growled. "I have sensitive documents in there. If I catch you in there again, you are fired. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir." He brushed past me, entering the office and slamming the door. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I went back to the bedroom to retrieve the laundry Bella had mentioned. It was a pile of lingerie. Expensive, lacy things. I picked them up, the texture slippery in my hands. I recognized the brand. I recognized the collection. I had seen the charge for these on the joint American Express account 3 weeks ago, $5,000. I had assumed he bought them for me as a surprise for when I returned. I carried the basket down to the laundry room. Bella followed me in a few minutes later, holding a glass of green juice. "Make sure you use the delicate detergent," she instructed, leaning against the doorframe, watching me like a hawk. "Richard bought me these. He says he loves seeing me in them because I actually have the body for it. Apparently, his wife let herself go years ago." I turned the tap on, letting the water run loud to drown out the sound of my teeth grinding together. I was a size 4. I ran marathons. But to Richard, betrayal required justification, and vilifying my appearance was the easiest route. "He sounds like a very generous man," I said, pouring the detergent into the basin. "Oh, he is," Bella beamed, oblivious to the predator standing 3 feet away from her. "He is going to take me to Europe next month. Once he gets rid of the dead weight." I scrubbed the silk. I scrubbed it with a violence that should have torn the fabric, but my hands were skilled. I washed away the evidence of their affair, turning the water gray. Later that afternoon, Richard left his briefcase on the kitchen counter while he went to the wine cellar. Bella was sunbathing by the pool. The house was quiet. I opened the briefcase. It wasn't locked. His arrogance was his true Achilles heel. He believed he was untouchable in his own domain. Inside, nestled between legitimate company reports, was a thick folder. I flipped through it. It was a property transfer deed. He was transferring the ownership of this house, my house, the one I bought before we were married, into a trust controlled by an offshore entity in the Seychelles. The date for the transfer was set for Friday. 3 days from now, he was going to kick me out of my own home, change the locks, and move Bella in, all while claiming I had agreed to it. I snapped photos of the documents with a tiny camera disguised as a pen in my pocket. I closed the briefcase and moved away, just as I heard the cellar door creak open. "Eliza?" Richard shouted from the hallway. "Where is the ice?" "Coming, sir," I called back. I spent the rest of the day in a blur of servitude. I polished silver that didn't need polishing. I ironed shirts that were already pressed. I listened to them laugh, eat, and plan their future on my grave. At 10 o'clock that night, I retreated to the maid's room. I waited until the house was completely silent. I could see the light under the master bedroom door turn off. I slipped out the back door, moving into the shadows of the garden. The air was cool, smelling of the ocean and impending rain. I walked to the far edge of the property, near the old stone wall where the Wi-Fi signal was weak but untraceable. I pulled a burner phone from inside my sock. It was a cheap plastic device I had bought at a gas station near JFK Airport. I dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang once. "This is Archer," a deep voice answered. It was my personal attorney, a man who had been loyal to my father and was even more loyal to me. He was the only person who knew I was back. "It is worse than we thought," I said, my voice low and steady. "He is not just stealing cash. He is selling the source code to Apex, and he is trying to transfer the Hamptons estate to a shell company on Friday." There was a silence on the other end, heavy with professional fury. "That is grand larceny and corporate espionage. Elizabeth, we can have him arrested tonight." "I can have the police at the door in 20 minutes. "No," I said, "not yet." I looked up at the house. The dark windows stared back at me like empty eyes. If I arrested him now, it would be a scandal. The stock would tank. Bella would play the victim. Richard would claim it was a misunderstanding, hire a team of lawyers, and drag this out for years. I didn't want a legal battle. I wanted an execution. "I want him to sign those papers," I said. "I want him to think he has won. I want him to stand on the precipice of everything he ever wanted. And then I want to push him off." "Elizabeth, that is risky," Archer warned. "I have planted bugs," I continued, ignoring him. "I have a mirror of his hard drive. I have photos of the fraudulent deeds. But I need more. I need to catch him in the act of the final transfer. I need the money to actually leave the account so we can trace it to the Caymans and freeze it there. That way, he loses everything. The money, the house, the girl, the freedom." "You want to go nuclear," Archer stated. "I want to salt the earth," I corrected. "Keep the team on standby. Contact the forensic accountants. Prepare the injunctions, but do not file anything until I give the signal. And the plan for Friday." "Keep the plan," I said. Watching a light flick on in the kitchen, Bella was getting water. "But add a new objective, total destruction. I don't just want my company back. Archer, I want his name to be a cautionary tale told in business schools for the next century." "Understood," Archer said. "Stay safe. Elizabeth." I hung up. I pulled the battery out of the phone and slipped it back into my sock. I walked back toward the house, through the kitchen window. I saw Bella standing there, the light of the refrigerator illuminating her face. She looked young, beautiful, and completely unaware that she was standing inside a trap. I opened the door and stepped back into the role of Eliza. The invisible woman, the ghost. "Is there anything else you need?" "Miss," I asked from the doorway, making her jump. "God, you creep!" she shrieked, clutching her chest. "Stop sneaking up on people. Go to bed." "Yes, miss," I said, lowering my head. "Good night." I walked to my small room, the smile on my face hidden by the shadows. They had 3 days left. I would make sure every second counted. Tuesday morning arrived with the subtle, suffocating tension of a violin string tightened to the point of snapping. I had been Eliza for 24 hours, and in that time, I had learned that invisibility was not just a disguise, it was a weapon. The campaign began with the coffee. Richard prided himself on his palate. He liked to tell anyone who would listen that he could distinguish between a single-origin Ethiopian roast and a blend from Colombia just by the aroma. It was a lie, of course, like everything else about him. He simply liked expensive things because they reassured him of his own importance. I stood at the espresso machine, the chrome gleaming under the kitchen lights. I ground the beans, but this time, I let the grinder run for 3 seconds too long, creating a powder so fine it would inevitably over-extract. Then, I tamped it down with the force of a hydraulic press. The resulting liquid that oozed into his cup was dark, thick, and acrid. "Coffee, sir," I said, sliding the cup onto the coaster beside his tablet. Richard was already in a foul mood. He was scrolling through stock futures, his brow furrowed. He picked up the cup without looking at me and took a large, confident sip. His reaction was immediate. He sputtered. Slamming the cup down so hard, liquid sloshed over the rim onto the white marble. "God! What is this?" he roared, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "It tastes like battery acid." Bella, who was sitting opposite him picking at a bowl of melon, jumped. "Richard, calm down. It is just coffee." "It is incompetent." Richard turned his glare on her. "I told you to show her how to use the machine. Bella, did you even bother? Or were you too busy shopping online for shoes you do not need?" Bella's face flushed a deep, resentful pink. "I did show her. She is just slow. Do not yell at me because the help is stupid." "Well, fix it." Richard pushed the cup away. "I cannot start my day with this swill. It throws off my entire rhythm." I stood by the sink, hands clasped, head bowed, hiding the smirk that threatened to crack my facade. "I am so sorry, sir. The machine has so many buttons. I will try again." "Don't bother," Richard snapped. "I'll pick something up on the way to the office." "Useless." He stormed out, grabbing his keys. The heavy front door slammed, shaking the frame. Bella sat in the silence, fuming. She stabbed a piece of cantaloupe with her fork. "You need to pay attention," she hissed at me. "He is under a lot of pressure. If you make him mad again, I cannot protect you." "Yes, ma'am," I whispered. "I will do better. Step 1 complete. Create friction. Make the home environment hostile." Step 2 was psychological warfare. While Bella went to the gym, or rather, the private Pilates studio Richard had installed in the East Wing, I went to work. I went into the guest bathroom downstairs, the one Bella preferred because the lighting was better for her makeup selfies. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, silver item. It was a Tiffany hair clip, sterling silver, engraved with a small blossom. Richard had given it to me for my 35th birthday. It wasn't particularly expensive, but it was sentimental. I had accidentally left it in a drawer in the master bath years ago, but I retrieved it during my initial sweep of the house. I placed it on the vanity, right next to Bella's array of La Mer creams. I positioned it so it looked like it had been carelessly forgotten, perhaps taken off before a shower. Then, I went to the pantry. Richard took a specific cocktail of supplements every morning, a multivitamin, fish oil, and a proprietary blend called Executive Focus that cost $100 a bottle. He swore it gave him the mental edge of a 20-year-old. I took the bottle of Executive Focus down. I had purchased a bottle of heavy-duty fiber supplements and herbal laxatives from a pharmacy in Queens before I arrived. The capsules looked almost identical clear casings filled with beige powder. I emptied Richard's Focus pills into a Ziploc bag and replaced them with the digestive bombs. "Enjoy your edge, darling," I murmured, screwing the cap back on. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Richard returned home for a video conference with the board of directors of a potential partner company in Tokyo. He stormed into his office, shouting for water. I brought him a pitcher of ice water and a glass. He was already seated at his desk, the camera on, his CEO face plastered on a mask of calm, authoritative competence. "Gentlemen," Richard said to the screen, his voice smooth, The integration of our systems is proceeding ahead of schedule. We anticipate zero downtime. I poured the water, lingering just long enough to see him pop 2 of the doctored capsules. I retreated to the hallway, pulled out my burner phone, and activated the listening app linked to the bugs I had planted. I plugged in my single earbud. 10 minutes into the meeting, the sounds began. As you can see from the excuse me, Richard shifted in his leather chair. A low, distinct gurgle echoed through the microphone. I heard him clear his throat loudly to cover the sound. As I was saying, the quarterly projections. Another sound, louder this time, the unmistakable rumble of a stomach in distress. "Sir, are you all right?" a voice from the computer speakers asked. "Fine, just skipped lunch," Richard grunted. He was sweating now. I could hear the leather of the chair creaking as he squirmed. The executive focus was kicking in. He cut the meeting short by 15 minutes, citing a connectivity issue, and sprinted for the bathroom while he was indisposed, creating a symphony of misery in the master bath. I slipped into his office. The computer was still on. He hadn't locked it in his rush. I moved to the keyboard. My fingers flew. I didn't look at the emails this time. I went deeper. I opened the command terminal. I was looking for a specific directory I had seen referenced in the printed papers I photographed earlier, Project Chimera. I found it buried in a hidden partition of the drive, disguised as system files. Project Chimera was not a software development project. It was a liquidation map. It detailed the systematic selling off of Northwood Tech's patents to shell companies owned by Marcus Vane Bella's father. I plugged in my drive. The transfer speed was agonizingly slow, 60%, 70%. "Eliza," Bella's voice rang out from the staircase. I froze. "Eliza, where is the steamer? My dress is wrinkled." "Coming, ma'am. It is in the laundry room," I shouted back, my voice cracking perfectly to sound like a panicked servant. 90%. Come on. I heard the toilet flush in the master bathroom. 99. Complete. I yanked the drive, shoved it into my bra, and was wiping the desk with my apron just as the bathroom door opened. Richard walked out, looking pale and shaky. He stopped when he saw me. His eyes narrowed. "What are you doing in here again?" he rasped, holding his stomach. "The water pitcher, sir," I said, grabbing the tray. "I thought you might need a refill. You looked warm." He stared at me. For a second, I saw a flicker of genuine intelligence in his eyes, the paranoia of a guilty man. He looked at the computer. The screensaver had just popped on. "Get out," he whispered, "and tell Bella to stop shouting. My head is splitting." I scurried out. Later that afternoon, the atmosphere in the house shifted from tense to poisonous. Bella had found the hair clip. I was dusting the hallway when I heard the screech. "Richard, who has been here?" "Who?" I peeked around the corner. Bella was standing in the foyer, holding the silver clip up like it was a piece of radioactive waste. Richard was coming down the stairs, looking haggard. "What are you screaming about now?" he groaned. "This." She threw the clip at him. It bounced off his chest. "I found this in the guest bathroom. It is not mine. It looks like an old lady clip. Did you bring someone here while I was in the city yesterday?" "What, no, you are crazy." Richard bent down to pick it up. He froze when he looked at it. He recognized it. I saw the color drain from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. "Well," Bella demanded, hands on her hips. "It must be Elizabeth's," he stammered. "She must have left it behind before she left." "In the guest bathroom," Bella laughed. A shrill, hysterical sound. "She never used that bathroom. That is the guest bathroom. Did you sleep with her there or someone else?" "I haven't slept with my wife in 2 years," Richard shouted, losing control. "Stop being paranoid. It's just a piece of junk." "It is silver. It is Tiffany," Bella screamed. "You are lying to me. You said she was gone. You said she was out of the picture." "She is." "Then why does her ghost keep popping up in this house?" Bella stormed off toward the kitchen. Brushing past me, she found me scrubbing the sink. She leaned against the counter, breathing hard, tears welling in her eyes. She needed an ally, even a lowly, Stupid one. Men are pigs. Eliza, she said, her voice trembling. Absolute pigs. I stopped scrubbing and looked at her with wide, sympathetic eyes behind my thick glasses. Yes, ma'am. My last husband was a bad man, too. He hid things, money, letters. Bella looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. Money? Oh, yes. I nodded, keeping my voice hushed. He would say business was bad, but then he would have new watches. He would say we had to save. But he had secret accounts. He told me I was crazy when I asked. That is how they do it. They make you think you are crazy so you do not look at the bank statements. Bella went pale. The seed was planted. She was already worried about her future. Now she was terrified she was being played just like I was. He won't show me the accounts, she whispered, more to herself than me. He says it is too complicated for me to understand. That is what they always say, ma'am, I said sadly, returning to my scrubbing. Right before they leave town. That evening, I executed the next phase. I sat in the maid's room with a portable typewriter I had found in the attic storage during a cleaning session. It belonged to my grandfather. I didn't want to use a printer. Printers left digital watermarks. I typed a letter to the whore sleeping in my bed. You think he loves you? He loves what you represent, youth and stupidity. He is using you to hide the money. Bella. And when the FBI comes, and they are coming, guess whose name is on the fraudulent accounts? Not his. Yours. I know you are in my house. I know you are wearing my clothes. Enjoy them. They will be the only things you own when I'm done with you. Sincerely. E. I waited until they were eating dinner, a silent, hostile affair where Richard picked at his food and Bella drank too much wine. I slipped up to the guest room where Bella was sleeping. She had locked Richard out of the master bedroom after the hair clip incident. I placed the letter on her pillow. I returned downstairs and went outside to the patio, pretending to sweep the leaves. I put in my earbud. 10 minutes later, dinner ended. Bella went upstairs. I waited. The scream that tore through the house was satisfyingly primal. Richard. I heard running footsteps, door slamming. She is here. She is watching us. Bella was sobbing. Read this. Read it. Who sent this? How did this get here? Richard's voice was shaking. There is no postmark. It was just here. She is in the house, Bella shrieked. Or she hired someone. Richard, she knows about the accounts. She said my name is on them. Is my name on them? Did you put my name on the illegal stuff? Shut up. Bella, keep your voice down. No, you told me it was safe. You said she was in Arizona or somewhere. She is here. I want to leave. I am taking my things and I'm going to my dad's. You are not going anywhere. Richard sounded dangerous now. If you leave, you ruin everything. We settle this on Friday. You just need to calm down. I am not calming down. I am calling the police. You call the police and we both go to jail. You idiot, Richard roared. The sound of a hand slapping a table echoed. Sit down, now! Silence fell, heavy and terrified. I stood in the garden, looking up at the lit window. The wind blew off the ocean, cold and biting. Friday, I whispered. They were cracking. Richard was physically weak and mentally fraying. Bella was terrified and suspicious. They were turning on each other, but I wasn't done. I heard the back door open. I quickly started sweeping. Richard walked out. He held a glass of scotch, his hand trembling slightly. He looked out at the dark lawn, his eyes scanning the shadows. He looked right at me, but he didn't see me. He was looking for a monster. Who's there? He called out into the darkness. Just me. Sir, I said, stepping into the light. Just Eliza, cleaning up. He let out a breath, his shoulders sagging. Did you see anyone? Anyone strange? A woman? No, sir, I lied smoothly. Just the wind. It is very loud tonight, he nodded, taking a long drink. Yeah, just the wind. He turned and went back inside, locking the door behind him. I looked at the lock. I knew the mechanism. I knew the code. I knew the man. He thought he could lock the danger out. He didn't realize the danger was already making his bed and scrubbing his floors. I went back to my room. I had the data. I had the Discord. Now I needed the endgame. Tomorrow, Maya would come home, and that would be the final piece of the puzzle. My daughter was the only thing Richard had left to leverage against me. Or so he thought. He didn't know that Maya was my daughter, and she had my blood running through her veins. She wouldn't be his pawn. She would be my knight. The crunch of tires on gravel at 2 p.m. shattered the fragile rhythm I had established in the house of lies. It was Wednesday, and according to the schedule Richard had carelessly left on the refrigerator, Maya was not due back from her summer camp in the Adirondacks until Saturday. I was in the kitchen, polishing the copper pots that hung above the island, a task Bella had assigned me because she claimed they looked cloudy when the heavy oak front door swung open. "We are home," the driver's voice echoed from the foyer. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Maya, my 10-year-old daughter, my reason for breathing. She was here, 3 days early, walking straight into a war zone she did not know existed. I dropped the polishing cloth and wiped my hands on my apron. Stepping out of the kitchen just as Maya walked into the hallway, she looked small in her camp t-shirt and denim shorts, her knapsack slung over one shoulder. Her dark hair was messy, windblown, and her knees were scraped the badges of a summer well spent, but her face was not happy. It was guarded. Bella emerged from the living room, holding a glass of iced tea. She stopped dead when she saw the child. "Oh," Bella said, her voice dripping with disappointed surprise. "You are back. Richard said Saturday." Maya looked at Bella. Her gaze was sharp, analytical, and far too mature for a fifth grader. She took in the silk robe, my robe that Bella was still wearing at midday. She took in the proprietary way Bella stood in the center of the hall. "I got sick," Maya said flatly. "Stomach bug. They sent me home." Then, her eyes moved past Bella and landed on me. Time seemed to suspend itself in a vacuum. I was standing in the shadows of the kitchen doorway, wearing the shapeless gray dress, the thick glasses, and the severe wig, to anyone else. I was Eliza, the invisible help, but Maya was my blood. She knew the tilt of my head. She knew the way I held my hands when I was nervous. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened slightly, the word mom forming on her lips. I locked eyes with her. I did not move my head, but I widened my eyes slightly and pressed a single finger to my lips in a gesture so subtle it could have been scratching an itch. "Do not speak." Maya froze. She looked from me to Bella, then back to me. I saw the gears turning in her brilliant mind. She had inherited her father's charm. Yes, but she had my logic. She processed the disguise, the stranger in her house, the tension in the air. She closed her mouth. She swallowed the word. "And who are you?" Maya asked, pointing at me, her voice steady but lacking its usual warmth. I exhaled, a breath I felt in my soul. She was playing along. "I am Eliza, miss," I said, dropping into my servant's cadence, keeping my head bowed. "Your father hired me to help around the house." "Where is my dad?" Maya asked, ignoring Bella completely. "He is at the office," Bella interjected, stepping forward with a fake, bright smile that did not reach her eyes. "I am Bella, a friend of your daddy's. He has told me so much about you." "Maya, you are even prettier than he said." Bella reached out to touch Maya's hair. Maya recoiled as if Bella's hand were a hot iron. "Do not touch me," Maya said coldly. Bella's smile faltered, a flash of annoyance twitching at the corner of her mouth. She recovered quickly, reaching behind the sofa and pulling out a shopping bag. "I have a surprise for you," Bella chirped. "I knew you were coming home eventually, so I got you a little something. It is the new designer backpack everyone is wearing. It cost $500. She held out the bag like a peace offering to a wild animal. Maya looked at the bag, then at Bella. "I have a backpack. Eliza, can you take my bag to my room? It is heavy." She walked past Bella as if the woman were a piece of furniture. Coming straight to me, she handed me her dirty, camp-smelling knapsack. As our hands brushed, she squeezed my fingers, a hard, desperate squeeze. "Yes, miss," I whispered. "I want a grilled cheese sandwich," Maya announced, heading for the stairs. "And I want Eliza to make it, not you." She threw the last two words at Bella over her shoulder. Bella stood in the hallway, clutching the expensive bag, her face flushing a deep, angry crimson. "Little brat," I heard Bella mutter under her breath as Maya disappeared up the landing. I went into the kitchen to make the sandwich. My hands were shaking. My daughter was safe, physically, but she was terrified. I could feel it. I cut the crusts off the bread with surgical precision, my mind racing. I had to talk to her. I had to explain. But not yet, not with Bella hovering. Richard returned at 6 o'clock. The performance he put on was worthy of an Academy Award. "Princess," he shouted, throwing his arms wide as he entered the living room where Maya was reading a book. "Daddy's home." He went to hug her. Usually, Maya would run to him. Today, she sat still on the sofa, her body rigid. When he wrapped his arms around her, she did not hug him back. She sat like a statue. "Hey, what is wrong?" Richard asked, pulling back, looking concerned. "Camp was that bad?" "I am just tired," Maya said, not looking him in the eye. "And my stomach still hurts." "Well, look who is here to cheer you up," Richard gestured to Bella, who was sipping a glass of wine. "Bella is going to be staying with us for a while. She's going to help take care of you since your mom is away." Maya looked at Richard. "Where is Mom? I tried to call her, but her phone is off." Richard sighed, putting on his sad dad face. "Mom is going through some things. Honey, she needed a break. From work, from us. She just took off. But do not worry. We are going to have a great summer without her." I was standing in the dining room, setting the table. I gripped a fork so hard the metal bit into my palm. He was telling her I abandoned her. Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable. Okay, Richard blinked, surprised by her lack of emotion. "Can I go to my room?" Maya asked. "I am not hungry." "Sure, honey," Richard said, clearly relieved he didn't have to deal with a crying child. "Eliza can bring you some soup." That night, at 2 a.m, the house was silent. I crept out of the maid's room, moving like a shadow across the landing. I opened Maya's door. She was awake. She was sitting up in bed, her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the door when she saw me. She didn't scream. I closed the door and locked it. I pulled off the wig. I took off the glasses. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. I rushed to the bed and gathered her into my arms. She buried her face in my shoulder, sobbing silently, her small body shaking with the release of the terror she had been holding back all day. "I knew it was you," she cried softly. "I knew it. Why are you wearing that? Why is that lady wearing your clothes? Why did Dad lie?" I pulled back, holding her face in my hands. I needed her to be brave. I needed her to be older than her 10 years. "Listen to me. Maya," I said, my voice low and urgent. "We are playing a game, a very serious game, like the spy movies we watch." "Is Dad the bad guy?" she asked. The question broke my heart, but I could not lie to her. "Yes," I said. "Dad and Bella are trying to take our house. They are trying to take my company, and they are trying to take our money. If they know I am here, we lose everything. We have to leave with nothing." Maya wiped her eyes. "So you are a spy?" "I am," I said, "and I need a partner. Can you be my partner?" Her eyes hardened. The tears stopped. She nodded. "What do I have to do?" "You have to be my eyes and ears when I'm not in the room," I explained. "You have to pretend you hate me, Eliza. You have to pretend you are just a normal kid. But you need to listen. If they talk about money, or dates, or banks, you remember it, and you tell me at night." "I can do that," she said. "I hate her. Mom, she called me a brat today." I know. I kissed her forehead. I heard her, and we are going to make her pay for that, but you have to be patient. 2 more days. Can you do that? Yes, she whispered. I love you, Mom. I love you too, my brave girl. Now sleep. Tomorrow, the mission starts. Thursday became a test of endurance. Richard left early for the city to meet with lawyers. My lawyers, ironically, who were stalling him per my instructions. That left Bella alone with Maya and me. Bella had no interest in parenting. She sat by the pool, scrolling through Instagram, while Maya sat at the patio table drawing in a sketchbook. I was sweeping the deck, keeping my distance but keeping my recorder active in my pocket. Hey, Bella called out to Maya. Stop slouching. You look like a hunchback. Maya didn't look up. I am drawing. You are drawing garbage, Bella snapped. Why don't you go inside and play video games or something? You are annoying me just sitting there. This is my house, Maya said calmly. I can sit where I want. Bella stood up. Walking over to the table, she snatched the sketchbook away. Hey, Maya shouted. Do not talk back to me, Bella hissed, leaning down, her face contorted with malice. You think because your daddy spoils you, you are special, you are just a burden. Maya, your mom left because she couldn't stand you, and pretty soon, your dad is going to send you to boarding school in Switzerland so we can actually enjoy our lives. So shut up and disappear. I froze. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to swing the broom handle into Bella's knees. But I saw Maya. She didn't cry. She stared right back at Bella. You are mean, Maya stated. I am honest, Bella sneered, tossing the sketchbook into the pool. Oops, go fish. I watched the book float in the chlorine. I pulled out my phone and checked the app. The waveform was spiky and clear. Recorded, every word. This recording alone would guarantee Richard never got custody. No judge in New York would give a child to a man who allowed this woman near her. Bella stormed back inside, yelling for me. Eliza, get me a vodka tonic. Now. Yes, ma'am, I called out. I walked past Maya. She looked at the pool, then at me. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible wink. Later that afternoon, we had a close call that nearly ended the game. Richard had returned and was eating a late lunch in the kitchen. Maya was sitting at the counter, swinging her legs. I was washing dishes. I want the magic toast, Maya said suddenly. Richard looked up from his paper. What? Magic toast, Maya repeated. The kind with the cinnamon sugar and the star shape in the middle. Mom always makes it when my stomach hurts. I stiffened. I had made that for her hundreds of times. It was our secret comfort food. I don't know how to make that, Richard grumbled. Ask Eliza for regular toast. Eliza knows how to make it, Maya said. Looking at me, Richard froze. He turned his head slowly to look at me. His eyes narrowed. How would Eliza know how to make your mother's special toast? Maya, he asked, his voice low and dangerous. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. Maya's eyes widened. She realized she had slipped. She had assumed that because I was Mom, I could just do it. She forgot the logic of the lie. Maya stammered. I turned around, wiping my soapy hands on my apron. My face was a mask of confused subservience. Magic toast, sir, I asked, tilting my head. Is that just cinnamon toast with a cookie cutter shape? I used to make that for the Henderson children when I worked in Greenwich. It is a very popular trick for nannies to get children to eat. Richard stared at me. He studied my face, searching for a crack. He looked at the gray dress, the thick glasses, the bad posture. He looked back at Maya. Is that what it is? Just a cookie cutter shape? Maya nodded vigorously. Yes, the nanny at camp made it too. It is just toast. Richard exhaled, the tension leaving his shoulders. Right. Well, fine. Make her the damn toast. Just keep it quiet. I have a headache. Yes, sir, I said. I turned back to the sink. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would bruise my ribs. Maya let out a shaky breath behind me. That night, As I tucked the listening device under the dining room table for the next day, I realized something. We were not just surviving, we were winning. Bella was unraveling. Richard was oblivious. And my daughter and I were a team. Tomorrow was Friday, the day of the transfer, the day of the party, the day everything would burn. I went to bed and stared at the ceiling of the maid's room. I could feel the endgame approaching. It felt like the drop of a roller coaster. Terrifying, inevitable, and exactly what I had been waiting for. Friday arrived with the frenetic energy of a ticking time bomb. Richard, in a stroke of manic genius, or perhaps sheer desperation, had decided that the best way to secure the final $5 million he needed from his investors was to host an impromptu, intimate cocktail hour at the estate. The logic was flawed, but the intent was clear: dazzle them with the lifestyle he was about to steal, get the signatures on the Project Chimera funding round, and then disappear before anyone realized the project was nothing but smoke and mirrors. By 4 p.m, the house was buzzing with caterers I hadn't hired. Florists were dragging in monstrosities of white lilies that triggered my allergies, and I, the rightful owner of every square inch of this limestone purgatory, was relegated to a black uniform and a white apron, instructed to keep the glasses full and the conversation zero. Bella was in her element. She had spent 3 hours in makeup and emerged wearing a red dress that was illegal in 3 states. It was backless, frontless, and cost more than a Honda Civic. She strutted through the living room, barking orders at the catering staff like she was born to the manor, rather than just occupying it. "Eliza," she snapped, pointing to a tray of champagne flutes, "make sure these are circulated constantly. If I see an empty hand, I'm docking your pay." "Yes, ma'am," I mumbled, adjusting my glasses. The guests began to arrive at 6. It was a rogues gallery of Hampton's elite and Wall Street sharks. I recognized them all. There was Jonathan Sterling, a hedge fund manager who had once tried to buy me a drink at a gala and whom I had politely eviscerated with a discussion on market volatility. There was Clara Vance, a gossip columnist who would sell her own grandmother for a scoop. And most importantly, there was Arthur Penhaligon, a notoriously suspicious venture capitalist who was the lead investor Richard was trying to fleece. I moved through the crowd, a tray of crystal flutes balanced on one hand. It was a surreal, out-of-body experience. I was serving drinks to people who had been at my wedding. "Where is Elizabeth?" I heard Clara ask Richard as she accepted a canapé. "I haven't seen her in ages. Is she ill?" Richard laughed, a sound that was too loud and too brittle. "Ill, I wish it were that simple. Clara, the truth is," he lowered his voice, leaning in with a look of tragic stoicism, "she has had a breakdown, a complete mental collapse. The pressure of the company broke her. She is currently in a private facility in Switzerland. She signed full power of attorney over to me last week. It is heartbreaking, really." I gripped the tray so hard I thought the crystal would shatter. Mental collapse. He wasn't just stealing my money. He was stealing my sanity, my reputation, my very agency. "Oh, you poor man," Clara cooed, touching his arm. "To bear that burden alone." "I have support," Richard smiled, glancing at Bella, who was currently laughing too loudly at a joke Arthur Penhaligon hadn't made. I walked past them, my head down. "Champagne, Sir Madame." "Thank you," Clara said, barely glancing at me. I moved to the bar set up in the library. This was where my petty sabotage began. Richard had ordered cases of Chateau Margaux, a wine that retailed for $1,000 a bottle. To impress Arthur, a known unophile. Earlier that afternoon, while the caterers were setting up outside, I had taken the empty Margaux bottles from the recycling bin. Richard drank the good stuff even on Tuesdays, and filled them with a $10 supermarket Merlot I had bought. I corked them with a device from the cellar. I watched as Richard poured a glass for Arthur. 1996, Richard announced, swirling the glass. A majestic vintage, full-bodied, complex, just like this deal. Arthur took the glass, sniffed it, and frowned. He took a sip. His eyebrows shot up, not in pleasure, but in confusion. "Interesting," Arthur said, staring at the glass. "It has a very distinct finish, almost like jam." "Jam," Richard laughed nervously. "Notes of dark fruit, surely." "No," Arthur said coldly. "Jam, strawberry jam. Are you sure this hasn't turned, Richard?" "Impossible." Richard took a sip and nearly choked. It tasted like vinegar and sugar. "I will have the staff check the cellar temperature immediately. Eliza, get this away." I scurried over, taking the glasses. "So sorry, sir. I will bring a fresh bottle." I brought another bottle of the fake wine. The damage was done. Arthur was looking at Richard not as a connoisseur, but as a fraud who couldn't tell vinegar from vintage. But the wine was just the appetizer. The main course was the seed of doubt. I circled the room, looking for Arthur's jacket. He had draped it over a chair near the piano while he argued with Richard about the wine. I reached into my apron pocket. I had a business card. It wasn't mine. It belonged to a private investigator named Vance Associates, a fake entity I had created, but the website linked to a dossier of Richard's shell companies. I slipped the card into Arthur's breast pocket. On the back, I had scrawled a single note. "Check the Seychelles accounts." I moved away just as Bella stumbled over to the piano. She had been drinking the real champagne, like it was water. Her cheeks were flushed, and her eyes were glassy. "Everyone," Bella shouted, raising her glass. "I just want to propose a toast to Richard, the smartest man in the room, and to our upcoming vacation." The room quieted. Richard looked at her, his eyes widening in panic. "Vacation?" Jonathan Sterling asked. "I thought you were in the middle of a critical merger." "Richard." "We are," Richard interjected quickly, stepping toward Bella. "A working vacation? A weekend in Aspen?" "Aspen." Bella giggled, swaying slightly. "No, silly. We are going where the water is blue and the laws are flexible. We are going to be gone for a long, long time, forever, maybe." A ripple of murmurs went through the room. Forever flexible laws. These were not words investors liked to hear. "She is joking." Richard grabbed Bella's arm, his grip visibly painful. "She has had a bit too much sun today. Bella, why don't you go lie down?" "I am not tired." Bella pulled away, stumbling. "I am celebrating. We are going to be rich. Richer than all of you boring people." The silence was deafening. Richard looked ready to murder her right there on the Persian rug. And then, the final blow landed. Maya appeared at the top of the stairs. She was wearing her favorite blue dress. She looked like an angel, innocent and confused. She walked down the stairs, clutching her teddy bear. She stopped in the middle of the room, looking at the crowd of strangers. "Daddy?" she asked, her voice small and clear. Richard spun around. "Maya, honey, go back to bed. Daddy is working." Maya didn't move. She pointed a small finger directly at Bella. "Daddy?" she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Why is that lady wearing Mommy's necklace, the one Grandma gave her?" The air left the room. Bella was wearing my sapphire pendant, a family heirloom worth more than the car she drove. I hadn't even noticed it until now. She must have raided my jewelry box. Every eye in the room turned to Bella's neck. The sapphires glittered under the chandelier, an undeniable evidence of theft. It is not," Bella stammered, her hand flying to her throat. "That is the Ashburn sapphire," Clara Vance whispered, her reporter instincts kicking in. "Elizabeth never takes it off. She wore it at her wedding." "Maya, you are mistaken," Richard said, his voice straining with suppressed rage. "It just looks similar. Go to your room, now." "But it has the scratch on the back," Maya insisted, her voice rising. "From when I dropped it. Let me see." She ran toward Bella. Bella shrieked and backed away. Knocking into a waiter me, the tray of champagne flutes crashed to the floor, glass shattered. Champagne soaked the hem of Bella's red dress. "Get this brat away from me," Bella screamed. losing all composure. She is crazy, just like her mother. The mask had fallen. The charming hostess was gone, replaced by a shrieking harpy. The guests looked at each other with a mixture of horror and fascination. "I think we should leave," Arthur Penhaligon said. Retrieving his jacket, he felt the card in his pocket, frowned, pulled it out, and read the note. His eyes shot to Richard. They were cold, dead cold. "Arthur, wait," Richard pleaded, stepping over the broken glass. "Let me explain. The child is confused. The wine was a mistake." "I don't think so." "Richard," Arthur said quietly, "I think the mistake was assuming we were idiots. The deal is on hold, indefinitely." He walked out. The others followed, a stream of exodus leaving Richard standing in the wreckage of his party. The front door closed. Silence returned to the house, broken only by Maya's soft sobbing, a fake sob. I noted with pride, but effective. Richard turned to Bella. His face was purple. "You stupid cow," he whispered. "Me," Bella shrieked. "Your brat ruined it. She attacked me." "You were wearing the necklace," Richard roared. "I told you to leave the jewelry alone." "You greedy, brainless." He raised his hand and slapped her. It wasn't a hard slap. It was a snap of the wrist, a loss of control. But the sound was sharp. Bella gasped, clutching her cheek. She stared at him, shock replacing the drunkenness. "You hit me," she whispered. "I should have done it sooner." Richard spat. "Get upstairs. Get out of my sight. If you ruin tomorrow, I will kill you myself." He stormed off toward his office, likely to try and salvage the deal over the phone. Bella stood there, tears streaming down her face. She looked around the room. She saw me. Eliza, on my knees, picking up the shards of glass. "Did you see that?" She choked out. "He hit me." I looked up. My expression was one of terrified sympathy. "I saw ma'am," I whispered. "That is how it starts. First the yelling, then the hitting, then—" I trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Bella turned and ran up the stairs. Sobbing, I continued to pick up the glass. A shard cut my finger. A drop of blood fell onto the white marble, bright red against the cold stone. It was done. The investors were gone. The lovers were at war. And tomorrow, the accounts would open for the transfer. I looked at the drop of blood. "Blood for blood." "Richard," I whispered. "Blood for blood." The morning sun did not bring clarity. It brought the harsh, blinding light of exposure. The house felt like a drum pulled too tight, waiting for a single touch to make it scream. I was in the kitchen, scrubbing the remnants of burnt toast from a pan Richard's attempt at breakfast, because he refused to ask me for help after the wine debacle when the shout came from the second floor. It was not a shout of anger this time. It was the specific, high-pitched frequency of pure panic. "No, no, no, no." I heard the sound of a heavy object hitting the floor, likely a paperweight. Then, Richard's voice, booming and terrified. "Who touched this computer? Who was in here?" I dried my hands on my apron, my heart rate spiking to 120 beats per minute. I knew exactly what he had found. I had been careful, meticulous even. But Richard was not as stupid as I hoped. He had checked the system logs. He had seen the access timestamp from Tuesday afternoon, the 20-minute window when he was vomiting in the bathroom. I moved to the bottom of the stairs, assuming my position of the terrified servant. Richard appeared at the banister, his hair wild, his eyes bloodshot from the hangover and the fear. He was wearing the same clothes he had passed out in. "Eliza!" he roared. "Yes, sir," I called up, pitching my voice to tremble. "Did you let anyone into the house? A cleaner? A repairman? Anyone?" "No, sir. Only the caterers yesterday, and the guests." "Not yesterday. You idiot, Tuesday. Was anyone in my office on Tuesday?" "No, sir. I was cleaning the hallway. I saw no one." He gripped the banister, his knuckles white. "Someone accessed the Chimera files. Someone copied them. There is a digital footprint." He wasn't talking to me anymore. He was talking to the ghosts closing in on him. He pulled out his phone, his fingers shaking so hard he dropped it once before dialing. "Get me Secure Corp," he barked into the receiver. "I don't care what time it is. I want a full sweep. Electronic, physical, everything. I think I have a bug. I think I have a mole. Get a team here. You have 45 minutes. He hung up and ran back into his office, slamming the door. My blood ran cold. Secure Corp. They were not the local alarm company. They were high-end corporate fixers. Former military. They brought frequency scanners, non-linear junction detectors, and thermal imaging. If they swept the office, they would find the bug under the desk. If they swept the bedroom, they would find the one behind the curtain rod. I had 45 minutes to sanitize the house. I needed a reason to be in those rooms, and I needed it now. Fate, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. Just as I was calculating how to set a small fire in the wastebasket to create a distraction. A scream tore through the west wing. This one belonged to Bella. My face. Oh my God. My face. I ran up the stairs. Not to help, but to use the chaos. I burst into the guest bedroom. Bella was standing in front of the vanity mirror, clutching her cheeks. The cheap, chemical-laden moisturizer I had swapped into her $50 jar of luminous silk cream 3 days ago had finally done its work. Her face was a map of angry red welts. Her eyes were puffy slits. Her skin looked like it had been scrubbed with steel wool. "What is happening to me?" she shrieked. Turning to me, she looked monstrous. Is it the water? Is it the food I am burning? "Oh, Miss Bella," I gasped, covering my mouth. "It looks like poison ivy. Did you walk in the garden?" "No. I just put on my face cream." She threw the jar at the wall. It shattered. "Eliza, get me ice. Get me a doctor, Richard," she screamed. Richard came running out of his office. "What now? I'm trying to save our lives." "Bella." "Look at me," she wailed. Richard stopped. He grimaced, actually recoiling from her. "Jesus. Bella, you look allergic." "I am dying. Call a dermatologist." "I have a security team coming in 30 minutes to sweep for bugs because someone stole our data. And you are worried about a rash," Richard yelled. "Put some ice on it and stay in your room. I don't want the security team seeing you like that. It is embarrassing." He turned back to his office. "Eliza, get her ice. Then stay in the kitchen. When the security team gets here, I want you and the kid out of the way. Go to the pool house." "Yes, sir," I said. This was my window. "I will get the ice, miss," I said to Bella, "and I will tidy up the master bedroom so the security men do not see the mess." "I don't care. Just fix my face," she sobbed, burying her head in a pillow. I ran to the master bedroom first. I had seconds. I stood on a chair and ripped the bug from behind the curtain rod. I slid under the desk in the corner and peeled the second bug off the underside. 2 down, 1 in the office. The office was the problem. Richard was in there. I went downstairs, filled a bowl with ice, and grabbed a clean towel. I ran back up. I stopped at Maya's door. She was playing with her iPad. Wearing headphones, I knocked hard. She looked up. I signaled her code red. She pulled the headphones off. "What?" "Dad has hired bad men to search the house," I whispered fast. "I have the listening ears. I need to hide them. But there is one left in his office." Maya's eyes widened. She didn't ask questions. She pointed to her art kit. "The blue marker. The ink is dry." I pulled the bottom out. "Smart girl," I said. I dropped the 2 bugs into her hand. "Hide these. I am going for the last one." I walked to the office door. I took a deep breath. I knocked. "What?" Richard yelled. "Ice for Miss Bella." "Sir?" I called through the door. "And I need to get the trash. It smells—" "Leave it." "Sir, if the security men come, they will smell the vomit from the other day. I missed a spot in the bin." Silence. Then the lock clicked. Richard opened the door. He looked frantic. He was shredding papers. 5 seconds, he hissed. "Grab the bag and get out." I walked in. The bug was under the desk, near his feet. There was no way to get it without him seeing. I improvised. As I bent down to grab the wastebasket, I pretended to trip over the rug. I went down hard, spilling the bowl of ice all over the floor and all over his shoes. "You clumsy idiot!" Richard jumped back, dancing to avoid the freezing cubes. "I am so sorry, I'm so sorry," I wailed, dropping to my knees. I used the towel to frantically wipe his shoes, creating a flurry of motion. While his eyes were focused on his wet socks, my left hand shot out, reached under the lip of the mahogany desk, and ripped the adhesive bug free. I palmed it instantly, shoving it into my sleeve. "Get out." Richard shoved me with his foot. "Just get out." I scrambled backward, grabbing the trash bag and the empty bowl. "Sorry, sir." I ran into the hallway. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. I went straight to Maya's room. She was waiting. I handed her the third bug. She popped the cap off a thick blue marker, slid the bug inside the hollow barrel, and snapped the cap back on. She threw it into a pile of 50 other markers. "Safe," she whispered. 10 minutes later, the gravel crunching signaled the arrival of Secure Corp. They were professional, 3 men in dark tactical polos and cargo pants. Carrying hard cases, they didn't look like mall cops. They looked like mercenaries. Richard met them at the door. "Sweep everything. Focus on the office and the network router. Find the leak." "Yes, Mr. Ashburn," the lead agent said. His name tag read Kovac. He had eyes like a shark. I took Maya to the pool house as ordered. We sat on the wicker furniture, listening to the silence. I had disabled the bugs before handing them to Maya, so I couldn't hear what was happening. We were blind. An hour passed. The sun climbed higher, baking the slate roof of the pool house, finally. Richard waved us back in. He looked exhausted, but also confused. The agents were packing up in the foyer. "Well?" Richard demanded, his arms crossed. "Where is it? Where is the bug?" "The house is clean. Mr. Ashburn," Kovac said, his voice flat. "We scanned the RF spectrum. We checked for semiconductors. We swept the phone lines. There are no active listening devices in the primary residence." Richard let out a breath, rubbing his face. "So I am crazy, is that it?" "I didn't say that," Kovac said. He paused, looking around the hallway. His gaze landed on me for a second, then slid away. "We found traces of a digital intrusion on your desktop. Someone used a physical bypass, a USB drive." "Who?" "Impossible to say without fingerprints, and the keyboard has been wiped clean," Kovac said, "but the timestamps don't lie. Someone was in that chair." He stepped closer to Richard. "Sir, if I were you, I would look at who has access. The locks were not picked. The alarm was not triggered. The enemy is inside the perimeter." Richard went pale. He looked at the stairs where Bella was hiding. He looked at me. "The maid," Richard whispered. Kovac glanced at me. I was standing there, holding a feather duster, looking at the floor with my mouth slightly open, catching flies. "Unlikely," Kovac sneered. "Unless she has a degree in computer engineering, it takes skill to bypass your firewall. This was a corporate espionage, or what? Or someone who knows your passwords," Kovac said. "Good day, Mr. Ashburn. The bill will be sent to your office." The agents left. Richard stood in the hallway, the silence pressing in on him. "Inside the perimeter," he muttered. He turned and looked at me. "Where were you on Tuesday afternoon, Eliza?" "I was scrubbing the toilets, sir," I stammered, "and washing the sheets." He stared at me for a long time. Then he shook his head. "Go make me a drink. Scotch? Double?" "Yes, sir." He didn't suspect me. I was too beneath him. He suspected Bella, or he suspected he was losing his mind. But Bella was not going down quietly. She came downstairs an hour later, wearing huge sunglasses and a scarf wrapped around her head to hide her disfigured face. She marched into the living room where Richard was nursing his third drink. "It is her!" Bella hissed, pointing a shaking finger at me as I dusted the mantel. "Who?" Richard groaned. "The witch. The maid Eliza," Bella screamed. "Ever since she got here, everything has gone wrong." My face the party. The wine. The weird noises. She is a jinx. Richard, she is bad energy. I want her gone. Fire her. Richard slammed his glass down. I cannot fire her. Bella. Why not? She is a servant. Because I have no cash. Richard exploded. I have drained the operational accounts to set up the transfer for tomorrow. I have $300 in my checking account until the Cayman transfer clears. I cannot afford to pay an agency fee for a new maid. And I certainly cannot afford to pay a severance to this one to keep her quiet about the fact that I'm living with my mistress. She stays because she is cheap, and she is already here. I kept dusting. My back to them. Broke. He was completely leveraged. He had gone all in. I hate you, Bella spat. I hate this house. I hate her. Just one more day, Richard pleaded, his voice cracking. 24 hours, Bella. Then we are rich. Then we can fire everyone. Then we can burn this house down for the insurance money for all I care. Just hold it together. Bella stormed out to the patio. I knew I needed to turn the screw one last time. Richard was teetering on the edge of a breakdown. I needed to push him over. I waited until he went to the bathroom. I moved to the library, where he often sat to brood, on the side table. Under a stack of recent magazines, I slid a piece of paper. It was not a full newspaper. It was a yellowed clipping I had kept in my wallet for years. It was from Tech Weekly, dated 8 years ago. The headline read, "The Ghost in the Machine, Elizabeth Ashburn's Unseen Code." The article detailed my background in encryption and surveillance systems skills I had downplayed significantly during our marriage. Preferring to let Richard think he was the savvy one, I placed it so the corner stuck out just enough to catch the eye. Richard returned 10 minutes later. He poured another drink. He sat down. He picked up the stack of magazines to move them. The clipping fluttered to the floor. He stared at it. He reached down and picked it up. I watched from the reflection in the glass cabinet doors in the hallway. He read the headline. He read the first paragraph. Ashburn's ability to manipulate digital environments is unparalleled. She builds backdoors into systems that appear impenetrable. His hand began to shake. The paper rattled. He looked up. He looked around the room. The paranoia was eating him alive. He wasn't afraid of a corporate spy anymore. He was afraid of me. He was realizing, perhaps for the first time, that the woman he had dismissed as a boring workaholic was actually a predator he had foolishly tried to tame. "Elizabeth," he whispered to the empty room. He crumpled the paper and threw it into the fireplace. He grabbed the bottle of scotch and drank directly from it. By 10 o'clock that night, Richard was passed out in the leather armchair in the library. The house was dark. Bella was locked in the guest room, refusing to come out. I went to the garden. I pulled the burner phone from the soil of the potted fern where I had hidden it. I typed the message. I know what you're doing. I know about the transfer. I know about the accounts. You think you are the player, Richard, but you are just the pawn. 24 hours. I hit send. Inside the library. Richard's phone chimed. The sound was loud in the silence. I watched through the window. Richard stirred. He groaned. Reaching for the phone. He squinted at the screen. He sat up. He read the message. He dropped the phone as if it were red hot. He stood up, knocking the chair over. He spun around, looking at the windows, looking at the dark corners of the room. "Who is there?" he screamed. "Show yourself." There was no answer, only the wind rattling the panes. He was broken. He was terrified. He was exactly where I wanted him. I slipped the phone back into the dirt. I walked back to the servants' entrance. Tomorrow was the endgame. The trap was set. The bait was taken. I went to sleep with a smile on my face. Friday morning did not break with the sun. It broke with the cold. Blue light of a computer screen and the encrypted hum of a satellite phone. I was no longer just a wife, nor was I merely a servant. I was the lead investigator in the dismantling of my own life. At 5 a.m, while the house was still wrapped in the silence of the guilty, I sat in the laundry room. The dryer was running, tumbling a load of towels to create a rhythmic white noise that would baffle any low-level listening devices. Just in case Richard had taken the advice of the security team and installed his own, I had my burner phone pressed to my ear. "We have the package," the voice on the other end said. It was David Thorne, my vice president of operations, a man who had been with Northwood Tech since my father's days in a garage. He was the only person in the C-suite I trusted implicitly. "Confirm contents," I said, my voice steady, stripped of all emotion. "It is all here, Elizabeth," David replied. "The forensic accounting team went through the mirror drive you uploaded. We have the wire trails. We have the shell company registrations in the Seychelles, Panama, and the Cook Islands. We have the emails between Richard and Marcus Vane detailing the sale of the Chimera source code. It is a textbook RICO case, fraud, embezzlement, industrial espionage, and money laundering." "And the tax evasion?" I asked. "He hasn't reported income on the offshore accounts for 3 years," David confirmed. "The IRS is going to have a field day, but the FBI is more interested in the Chimera sale. That code has military applications. Selling it to a foreign-backed entity like Apex Dynamics constitutes a federal crime on a different level." "Good," I said. "Is Agent Miller ready?" "He is standing by. They have a team staged 5 miles from the estate. They are waiting for the trigger event. The trigger event will be at 12:30 today," I said, checking my watch. "Richard is scheduled to make the final transfer of $5 million to the Cayman account to clean the operational funds before he runs. Once he is executed, the crime is consummated. That is when you move." "Understood." David paused. "Elizabeth, are you sure you want to be there when they take him down? It is going to be ugly." "I do not just want to be there." "David," I whispered, staring at the spinning drum of the dryer. "I want to open the door for them." I hung up and destroyed the SIM card. Flushing it down the utility sink, the legal net was cast. Now, I had to ensure the rats were in the right position when it closed. Step 1 was isolating the target. I went upstairs to the kitchen and started the coffee. Strong, black, and this time, perfectly brewed. I needed Richard alert. I needed him confident. At 7 o'clock, Richard shuffled into the kitchen. He looked terrible. A man haunted by ghosts and hangovers, but there was a manic energy in his eyes. He was checking his phone every 30 seconds. "Coffee, sir," I said, placing the cup down. "Did you get the mail?" he snapped. "No, sir, but there was an urgent notification on your tablet. It looked like it was from your lawyer. I had spoofed the email earlier that morning. It was a masterpiece of social engineering." Richard grabbed the tablet. I watched his eyes scan the screen. The email, ostensibly from his divorce attorney, stated that Elizabeth Ashburn had agreed to a meeting. She was flying in and would be at the estate at noon today to sign the divorce papers and the asset division agreement. The email implied that she was broken, defeated, and just wanted to sign and get it over with. "Yes," Richard shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "Yes, I knew it. She broke. She is coming to sign." He jumped up, pacing the kitchen. "She is coming at noon. Perfect. That gives me time to finalize the transfer at 12:30. And then she signs the house over to me at 1. By dinner time, I will have the money, the house, and the freedom." He spun around to look at me. "Eliza, I need this house spotless. And I mean spotless. I want her to walk in here and see perfection. I want her to see that I didn't need her." "Yes." I said, "What about Miss Bella?" Richard's face darkened. "Right, Bella. Elizabeth cannot see Bella here. It would complicate the signing. If she sees the mistress, she might get jealous and stall the negotiations." He ran up the stairs. I followed quietly to the landing. I heard him banging on the guest room door. "Bella, wake up." "Go away." Bella's muffled voice came through. "My face still hurts. I don't care about your face. You need to leave. Elizabeth is coming." The door flew open. Bella stood there, wrapped in a sheet, looking horrified. "She is coming here, the psycho." "She is coming to sign the divorce papers," Richard said, shoving a credit card into her hand. "Take this. It is the black Amex. Go to the city, Go to Madison Avenue. Buy yourself a new wardrobe. Buy jewelry. I don't care. Just get out of the house until tonight. When you come back, I will be a single man with $50 million in the bank." Bella looked at the black titanium card. Her greed instantly overpowered her vanity. "The black card, seriously?" "Yes, no limit. Just go. Take the convertible. Go now." "Okay," Bella squealed, suddenly cured of her depression. "I will be gone in 20 minutes. I smiled. It was almost too easy. At 8:30, Bella's red convertible roared down the driveway. She was wearing huge sunglasses and a scarf, looking like a movie star on the run, as soon as her taillights disappeared around the bend. I pulled out my burner phone, a backup one I had kept for this specific moment. I dialed the number for American Express Platinum Services. I had the account number memorized. It was, after all, my account. Richard was merely an authorized user. "Good morning," I said to the operator, adopting my authoritative CEO voice. "This is Elizabeth Ashburn. I am calling to report a theft." "Oh, I am so sorry to hear that, Ms. Ashburn," the operator said. "Which card?" "My husband's supplementary card," I said. "The Centurion. It was taken from our home this morning. I believe the thief is heading toward Manhattan. I want you to flag it as stolen immediately. Do not decline the first transaction. I want the police to have a location. But as soon as the total exceeds $5,000, hard block it and notify the local authorities of fraud." "Understood. Ms. Ashburn, we are freezing it now. Should we send a replacement?" "No," I said coldly. "We won't be needing that account anymore." Bella was now a ticking time bomb. She would spend a few hours shopping, racking up a bill, and then, right when she felt like a queen, the handcuffs would snap shut. It was petty, perhaps, but she had worn my mother's necklace. She had mocked my daughter. Petty was the least she deserved. Step 2 complete. The mistress was neutralized. Step 3 was the extraction of the innocent. Maya was in the living room, watching cartoons. She looked up when I entered. She saw the look on my face. She turned off the TV. "Is it time?" she asked. "It is time," I said. "Grandma's driver is at the back gate. You are going to go with him. He is going to take you to her house in Connecticut. It is safe there." "Are you coming?" Maya asked, her voice small. "Not yet." I knelt down and hugged her. "I have one last thing to do. I have to finish the game, but I will be there for dinner, I promise. And when I get there, we are going to have a pizza party. No more green juice, no more fancy dinners." Maya hugged me tight. "Get him, Mom. I will." I walked her to the back service entrance. The black sedan was waiting. My mother's driver, a man who used to be a Navy SEAL, nodded to me. He knew the stakes. I watched the car drive away until it was just a speck of dust in the distance. My chest loosened. Maya was safe. The only thing left in this house was the enemy. Step 4 was the containment. Richard was in his office, frantically preparing documents. He was so focused on his impending victory that he didn't notice the silence in the house. I went to the garage. Richard's pride and joy. A vintage Aston Martin DB9 sat under a tarp. This was his escape vehicle. He had packed a bag in the trunk 2 days ago. I had seen him do it. His plan was obviously to sign the papers, initiate the transfer, and then drive to the private airfield where a chartered jet was waiting to take him to a non-extradition country, just in case things got complicated. He thought of everything, except the fact that I was the one who restored this car for him. I popped the hood. I didn't cut the brake lines. That was dangerous and messy. Instead, I located the electronic control unit. I pulled a small device from my pocket, an OBD2 jammer I had built in the lab. I plugged it into the diagnostic port under the dashboard. This little device would allow the car to start. It would allow the engine to rev. But the moment the car was shifted into drive, the jammer would scramble the fuel injection timing, causing the engine to stall out completely and lock the transmission in park. He would be sitting in a 2-ton paperweight. I closed the hood and wiped my fingerprints off the fender. "Try to run now, Richard," I whispered. Step 5 was the transformation. I went to the master bedroom, Richard was still in his office, shouting into the phone at his banker. I opened the walk-in closet. All of my clothes were still there, pushed to the back to make room for Bella's gaudy sequins. I reached into the very back, behind the winter coats. I pulled out a garment bag I had hidden there on the first day. Inside was my armor, a white Alexander McQueen suit, sharp enough to cut glass, a pair of 4-inch stilettos, and my diamond stud earrings. I laid them out on the bed in the guest room, hidden under the duvet. I checked the time. It was 11 o'clock. 1 hour until the curtain rose. I went downstairs one last time as Eliza. "Sir." I knocked on the office door. "What?" Richard yelled. "I have prepared a light lunch, and I have set the table in the conference room for the signing, as you asked. Water, pens, and notepads." Richard opened the door. He was sweating, but he was grinning. "Good, good. You are actually useful today. Eliza, once my wife leaves, I want you to take the rest of the day off. Here." He pulled a $100 bill from his pocket and threw it at me. It fluttered to the floor. "Go buy yourself something nice," he laughed. "Maybe a personality." I bent down and picked up the bill. "Thank you, sir. You are too generous." "I know I am," he gloated. "Now get out. She will be here any minute." I walked away, clutching the bill. It would be the last piece of currency he would ever control, that night or rather. The early hours of that morning before the sun rose, I had done one final thing. I had stood in the doorway of the bedroom and watched him sleep. He looked innocent when he slept. His face was relaxed, the cruelty smoothed out by unconsciousness. It was hard to reconcile this sleeping form with the monster who had stolen 10 years of my life. I remembered the day we met. He had spilled coffee on my blouse in a cafe. He had been so apologetic, so charming. I remembered our wedding day, the way he looked at me when I walked down the aisle. Was it all a lie? Every second of it? Or was there a moment, somewhere in the beginning, where he actually loved me? It didn't matter anymore. The man I loved was dead. The thing in the bed was a parasite. "Goodbye, Richard," I had whispered into the darkness. I hope the money was worth it. Now, standing in the hallway with the $100 bill in my hand, I felt a strange sense of peace. The grief was gone. The anger was cold and hard, like a diamond. I went into the maid's room. I took off the gray dress. I took off the glasses. I scrubbed the makeup from my face. I began to dress. The silk of the blouse felt like a second skin. The suit jacket buttoned with a reassuring snap. I stepped into the heels. Feeling my height return, my posture correcting itself, I looked in the mirror. Eliza was gone. Elizabeth Ashburn was back. I checked my watch. 11:59. I heard the sound of a car approaching the driveway. It was the FBI team, in unmarked vehicles, posing as my entourage. I walked to the front door, not as a servant, but as the owner. I waited for the doorbell to ring. It rang. I didn't open it. I waited for Richard to come running down the stairs, eager to greet his defeated wife. "I will get it," Richard shouted, bounding down the stairs, adjusting his tie. "Eliza, stay in the kitchen." He reached the door. He threw it open. A fake, sympathetic smile plastered on his face. "Elizabeth," he began, "I am so glad you decided to be sensible." He stopped, because no one was there. The porch was empty. He frowned, stepping out onto the porch. "Elizabeth." I stepped out of the shadows of the hallway behind him. My heels clicked on the marble. A sharp, authoritative sound that echoed like a gavel striking a block. "Hello, Richard," I said. He spun around. He looked at me. He looked at the white suit. He looked at the face he thought was broken. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Coffee?" I said, my voice ice cold. "Set the table." The trap snapped shut. The clock on the wall of the high-end boutique on Madison Avenue read 10:45. It was the exact moment the first domino in Richard's carefully constructed house of cards did not just fall, but incinerated. Bella was standing at the counter of a store that sold handbags costing more than most people's college tuition. She had selected 3. She was flushed with the intoxicating power of the black titanium American Express card Richard had pressed into her hand earlier. She tapped the card against the terminal. Her chin held high, looking at the sales assistant with the disdain she felt was her birthright. "Declined?" the assistant said, her voice dropping a few degrees in warmth. "Try it again," Bella snapped, flipping her hair. "It is a Centurion card. It does not decline. It has no limit." The assistant tried again. The machine beeped a harsh rejection tone. "I am sorry, miss. It says, refer to issuer," and the assistant paused, looking toward the glass doors where 2 uniformed officers were stepping inside. Guided by a security guard. "The system has flagged this as a stolen card reported this morning." Bella's face went from smug to ghostly white in the span of a heartbeat. "Stolen, no. My fiancé gave it to me." "Miss Bella Vance?" the officer asked, stepping up to the counter. "Yes," she stammered. "We have a report from Ms. Elizabeth Ashburn regarding the theft of her financial instruments and a vehicle matching the description of the one you parked outside. You need to come with us." But Richard said. She was still protesting as they handcuffed her, dragging her out of the store past the gawking tourists. She was not the queen of the Hamptons. She was just another grifter caught in the headlights. Meanwhile, back at the estate, the air was thick with a different kind of tension. It was 11:30. Richard was pacing his office like a caged tiger. He had checked his reflection in the mirror 10 times. He had rehearsed his somber but relieved face for the arrival of my lawyers. He believed that in 30 minutes, he would sign a piece of paper that would grant him the empire I had built. I was in the kitchen, preparing his final cup. I had decided to play the game to the very last second. I had put the gray dress back on over my white suit. The wig was back in place, itchy and hot. The glasses slid down my nose. I needed him to see Eliza one last time. I needed him to see the nobody before he faced the executioner. I placed the cup on a silver tray. I walked up the stairs, my steps heavy and shuffling. I knocked on the office door. "Come in," Richard barked. I opened the door. The office smelled of stale scotch and nervous sweat. Richard was standing by the window, looking out at the driveway. "Is she here yet?" he demanded, not turning around. "No, sir," I said, my voice trembling perfectly. "But I brought you coffee. You seemed anxious." Richard turned. He looked at me with pure disgust. To him, I was a reminder of the mundane reality he was about to escape. I was the dirt on his shoe. "Anxious, I am not anxious, you stupid woman. I am victorious." He walked over and snatched the cup from the tray. "But at least you are good for something." He took a sip. I had not poisoned it this time. I had done something simpler. I had made it lukewarm. Richard grimaced and spat the liquid back into the cup. "It is cold," he screamed, his temper snapping under the pressure of the waiting game. "It is cold. Can you do nothing right? I ask for one thing, one simple thing." He drew his arm back and threw the cup. It struck the tray I was holding, splashing dark liquid all over my apron and the floor. The cup shattered against the leg of the desk. "You are useless," Richard roared, stepping into my personal space, his face twisted into a mask of rage. "You know what? You are fired. Get out. Get out of my house before I throw you out myself. I don't need you. I don't need anyone." He stood there, chest heaving, waiting for me to cower, waiting for me to cry and beg for my job as Eliza always did. But I did not cower. I stood very still. I let the silence stretch between us, heavy and dangerous. Then, slowly, I reached up. I took off the thick, black-rimmed glasses and dropped them onto the silver tray. They landed with a sharp clatter. Richard blinked. "What are you doing? Get out." I reached for the pins holding the itchy gray wig in place. I pulled them out, one by one, dropping them on the floor. Then, I grabbed the wig and ripped it off. My dark hair, shiny and smooth, tumbled down around my shoulders. Richard took a half step back. His eyes lost their focus, confusion warring with recognition. Eliza. I reached into the pocket of the apron and pulled out a wet wipe. I scrubbed my cheek, removing the layer of darker foundation I had used to change my skin tone. I wiped my mouth, revealing the natural shape of my lips. I untied the apron and let it fall to the floor, covering the coffee stain. I unzipped the back of the gray dress and shrugged it off, letting it pool at my ankles. I stepped out of the pile of rags. I stood before him in the white Alexander McQueen suit, the diamonds in my ears catching the light from the window. I stood 3 inches taller in my heels. My posture shifted from the slump of a servant to the steel spine of a CEO. I looked him dead in the eye. "The coffee isn't cold." "Richard," I said, my voice dropping the servant's rasp and returning to the cool, crisp, authoritative contralto he knew so well. "It tastes like freedom." Richard made a sound that was not quite a word. It was a strangulated gasp. All the color drained from his face, leaving him the color of old ash. He stumbled back, his legs hitting the leather chair. He collapsed into it, not because he wanted to sit, but because his knees had ceased to function. "Elizabeth," he whispered. It was the sound of a man waking up in a coffin. "But you are in Switzerland. The email." "I have been here," I said, taking a step toward him. "For 5 days. I was the one who washed your underwear. Richard, I was the one who poured your wine. I was the one who listened to you call me a boring, frigid workaholic while you planned to steal $20 million from the woman who made you." "No." He shook his head, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an exit. "No, that is impossible. Eliza was short. She was old." "She was a mirror," I said. "She reflected what you wanted to see. You wanted a servant, so you saw one. You never looked at me. Richard, not really. Not for years." Realization crashed into him like a freight train. He remembered the hair clip. He remembered the stomach ache. He remembered the ghost in the computer. "You," his voice shook, turning into a growl. "You set me up. The wine, the security team, the party." "Every single moment," I confirmed. "I played you like a cheap violin." The shock in his eyes hardened into something uglier. Desperation. Primal, violent desperation. He realized the trap had closed. He realized there was no lawyer coming. There was no money. There was only me. He stood up, his hands curling into fists. "You bitch," he spat. "You think you can just walk in here and take it back? I am still the CEO. I still have the authorization codes." "You have nothing," I said calmly. "The authorization codes were changed 10 minutes ago. Your access is revoked. Your accounts are frozen. I will kill you." He lunged. It was a clumsy, frantic attack. He swung his right fist at my face, a blow meant to silence the problem the only way he knew how. But I was not the woman he married 10 years ago, and I was certainly not Eliza. I had spent the last 3 years training in Krav Maga for stress relief, a hobby he had laughed at, calling it unladylike. I saw the punch coming a mile away. I stepped to the left, pivoting on my heel, as his fist passed harmlessly through the air where my head had been. I grabbed his wrist with my left hand and slammed my right palm hard into his elbow joint. There was a sickening pop. Richard screamed. I didn't stop. I used his forward momentum, hooking my leg behind his and driving my shoulder into his chest. He went down hard, slamming onto the Persian rug with a thud that shook the floorboards. I stood over him. He was clutching his arm, curling into a fetal position, wheezing. "Get up," I ordered. He looked up at me, terror in his eyes. He had never seen me physically violent. He had never imagined I was capable of it. "You broke my arm," he whimpered. "I restrained an attacker," I corrected. "And if you try to stand up before I tell you to, I will break the other one." I walked to the desk. I picked up the thick manila envelope that I had placed there earlier, hidden under the signing documents. I threw it at him. The envelope burst open, scattering photographs and papers all over his chest. Pictures of him with Bella, bank statements from the Cayman Islands, transcripts of his conversations with Marcus Vane. The forged deed to the house. What is this? He gasped, looking at the debris of his crimes. That is your life, Richard, I said. Or rather, the end of it. Elizabeth, wait, he stammered, trying to shift into his charm mode. Even as he lay on the floor with a dislocated elbow. We can talk about this. I was confused. Bella. She manipulated me. She made me do it. I love you. I was trying to secure our future. I laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. Save it for the jury. You are not going to sign a divorce settlement today. Richard, I pointed to the document lying nearest his face. It was a prepared statement, detailing his admission to embezzlement and fraud. You are going to sign a confession, I said. And then you are going to prison. I won't sign anything, he snarled, showing his teeth. You have no proof I did the transfer. I didn't hit the button yet. Oh, but you did. I smiled. I hid it for you. 5 minutes ago, using your credentials, from your computer. While you were screaming about the coffee, the money moved. The FBI tracked it. The crime is complete. His eyes went wide. You framed me. I facilitated you, I corrected. I just sped up the inevitable. The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, low at first, then growing louder, piercing the walls of the estate. Richard froze. He heard them. You called the police, he whispered. Not just the police, I said, walking to the window and looking out. I saw the black SUVs swarming through the front gates. The FBI, the SEC, and the district attorney, I believe they are all very eager to meet the man who tried to sell military-grade encryption keys to a foreign shell company. I turned back to him. He was crying now, ugly, snotty tears of a man who realized he was not the protagonist of the story, but the villain who gets crushed in the final act. Please, he begged. Elizabeth, don't let them take me. I can't go to jail. I am soft. I won't survive. You should have thought of that before you asked me to set the table, I said. I walked to the door. I put my hand on the knob. Where are you going? He screamed. Don't leave me. I am going to answer the door, I said. It is rude to keep guests waiting, especially when they have warrants. I opened the door and walked out, leaving him on the floor, surrounded by the paper trail of his own destruction, weeping into the rug I had bought with my first bonus check. The performance was over. The applause was about to begin, and it would sound exactly like the click of handcuffs. The sound of justice is not silent. It is a cacophony of sirens, shouting voices, and the heavy thud of boots on hardwood floors. I stood at the top of the grand staircase, watching the scene unfold below like a director observing the final act of a play I had written, produced, and starred in. The front doors of the estate, those heavy oak barriers Richard had thought would keep the world out, were thrown wide open. A team of FBI agents, windbreakers emblazoned with yellow letters, swarmed the foyer. Among them were officers from the Economic Crimes Unit, looking less tactical but equally dangerous with their briefcases and warrants. Richard Ashburn, federal agents, show yourself. Agent Miller's voice boomed, bouncing off the vaulted ceiling. They didn't have to wait long. Richard stumbled out of his office, clutching his injured arm. He looked small. The bravado, the arrogance, the CEO veneer, it had all evaporated, leaving behind a terrified man in a sweat-stained shirt. Do not shoot, he screamed, raising his good hand. I surrender. It was a mistake. A clerical error. 2 agents were on him in a second. They spun him around, slamming him against the wall, carefully avoiding the expensive art. I noted with approval. The click-click of handcuffs was the sweetest sound I had heard in 10 years. Richard Ashburn, you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit industrial espionage. Agent Miller recited the litany of his sins. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say. My wife? Richard yelled, spit flying from his mouth as they hauled him toward the door. My wife did this. She set me up. Talk to her. She is upstairs. Agent Miller looked up at the landing. He saw me standing there, immobile, impassive, a statue of retribution in white McQueen. He gave me a curt nod. I did not nod back. I simply watched. They dragged him out. I walked down the stairs, my heels clicking on the marble. I followed them out onto the front porch, the driveway. Usually a serene expanse of gravel and manicured hedges, was now a circus. I had tipped off Clara Vance and 3 other major news outlets an hour ago. The press vans were lined up outside the gate, their cameras zooming in with telephoto lenses. As Richard was shoved into the back of an unmarked SUV, the flashes erupted like a lightning storm. Mr. Ashburn, did you steal $20 million? Is it true you sold state secrets? Richard, look this way. He tried to hide his face in his shoulder. But it was too late. The image of the disgraced CEO, disheveled and handcuffed, was already being beamed to every financial news ticker in the country. I stood on the top step, partially obscured by a stone pillar. I didn't want my face to be the story yet. I wanted him to own this moment of shame alone. As the convoy of police vehicles began to pull away, a bright red convertible screeched through the open gates, nearly colliding with a police cruiser. It was Bella. She had been released. The police at the mall had held her for 3 hours. But since the credit card fraud was technically a civil dispute between spouses, or so my lawyers had argued to keep her in play for this specific moment, and she claimed ignorance of the theft, they had let her go with a citation pending investigation. She had raced back, likely assuming she could talk her way out of it or grab her things before fleeing. She didn't know the war was already over. She slammed the brakes, the car skidding on the gravel. She jumped out, her hair wild, her makeup smeared from crying. She was still wearing the scarf and sunglasses, looking like a tragic caricature of a Hollywood starlet. "Richard!" she screamed, running toward the police cars that were driving away. "Richard, wait, my bag is in there." The convoy didn't stop. The last car disappeared down the road, leaving a cloud of dust. Bella stood there, panting, staring at the empty road. Then she spun around and saw the house. She saw the open door. She saw the press vans outside the gate, the reporters shouting questions at her now. "Who is that? Is that the mistress?" "Hey, lady, did you help him steal it?" Bella panicked. She ran toward the house, seeking sanctuary. She stormed up the steps, her heels wobbling. "Eliza!" she shrieked, bursting into the foyer. "Eliza, where are you? Lock the door. Call the police." "No, don't call the police. Just lock the door." I was standing in the center of the foyer now. I had moved from the porch. I was waiting. Bella stopped. She blinked, her eyes adjusting from the bright sunlight to the dim interior. She looked at me. She saw a woman in a white suit. She saw the dark hair. She saw the diamonds. She saw the face she had only seen in photos Richard had turned face down, but she didn't recognize me instantly. Her brain was stuck on Eliza. "Who are you?" she demanded, breathless. "Where's the maid? Where's Eliza? I need water, and tell those people to go away." I smiled. It was the same smile I used when I closed a billion-dollar merger. Cold, polite, lethal. "Eliza is unavailable," I said. My voice was smooth, resonant, the voice of Elizabeth Ashburn. "She quit. Apparently, the working conditions were toxic." Bella froze. She knew that voice. She had heard it on the news clips she had watched while stalking my life. She peered closer, squinting. "You," she whispered. She stepped back. "You look like the woman whose husband you slept with." I finished the sentence for her. "Like the woman whose house you are standing in, like the woman whose clothes you are wearing." Bella's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a hook. "Elizabeth." "Hello, Bella," I said. "Or is it future Mrs. Ashburn? I believe that title is currently suspended." But you were Eliza," she gasped, the realization hitting her with the force of a physical blow. Her hand flew to her mouth. "You were the maid. You were here. The whole time." 5 days. I confirmed. I made your coffee. I washed your sheets. I listened to you call my daughter a brat. I listened to your plan to spend my money. Bella turned a sickly shade of gray. Her legs gave out, and she slumped against the wall. You tricked us. That is illegal. That is entrapment. It is surveillance, I corrected. In my own home, perfectly legal, unlike using a stolen credit card. I didn't steal it, she cried. Richard gave it to me. Richard has no money, I said, stepping closer. Richard has been arrested. His assets are frozen. The car you drove here, it will be repossessed in an hour. The clothes you bought, evidence. You have nothing. Bella. She looked around wildly. I will sue you. I will tell everyone you are crazy. Go ahead. I gestured to the open door where the press was still lingering at the gate. They are waiting for a quote. Tell them how you abused a 10-year-old child. Tell them how you conspired to defraud a public company. Bella went pale. What? Oh, did I mention? I pulled my phone out. I released the audio recordings 10 minutes ago, the ones where you screamed at Maya, the ones where you called her a burden. They are trending on Twitter right now. Evil stepmother is the #1 hashtag in New York. Bella pulled out her own phone. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped it. She scrambled to pick it up. She looked at the screen. Her Instagram notifications were exploding. Thousands of comments poured in. Accusations. Insults. Pure hatred. No, she sobbed softly. My brand. My followers. Your career is finished, I said coldly. You'll never land another sponsorship. You'll never be welcome anywhere again. You're untouchable now. She looked up at me, tears running down her face, smearing the expensive makeup I had watched her carefully put on. Why? Why would you do this? She cried. You could have just let him go. You could have just ended the marriage because you didn't just take my husband, I replied, my voice dropping into a quiet tone that felt more threatening than shouting. You crossed into my home. You crossed a line with my child. You tried to erase me. I didn't want to simply beat you. Bella, I wanted to make sure you could never step into this game again. I looked down at her collapsed figure. She looked small, broken. The arrogance was gone. Now, I said, glancing at an imaginary watch, you're trespassing, and you owe me compensation. Compensation, she whispered through her tears. Room and board, I listed. 5 nights at the Ritz-Carlton rates, plus a cleaning fee for the mess you made, and the silk blouse you ruined with self-tanner. I will send the bill to your father. Oh wait, his company is under investigation too. Better start saving your tips. Get out. I pointed to the door. Bella scrambled up. She didn't argue. She didn't look back. She ran out the door, shielding her face from the cameras, sobbing as she fled on foot down the driveway because the red convertible had indeed been blocked in by a tow truck that had just arrived. I watched her go. I walked back into the living room. I picked up the remote and turned on the television. CNBC was already broadcasting the breaking news. Breaking CEO of Vanguard Systems arrested in massive fraud scheme. Elizabeth Ashburn, founder and majority shareholder, issued a statement minutes ago, pledging full cooperation with authorities and announcing her return as interim CEO to stabilize the company. I looked at the stock ticker at the bottom of the screen. Vanguard Systems VANG had dipped initially on the arrest news, but was now rallying. It was up 5%. The market loved a strong leader. They loved a cleanup. They loved me. I sat down on the sofa, my sofa. I kicked off my heels. My phone rang. It was David. It is done, David said. The board is in emergency session. They voted unanimously to reinstate you. Richard is in holding at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. He has been denied bail due to flight risk. And the assets. Frozen solid. We recovered 18 million of the 20. The rest well. Richard spent it on the car and the girl. We will write it off. And his legal representation. He requested the company firm. David laughed. We denied him. Conflict of interest. He is stuck with a public defender unless he has a secret stash we missed, which he doesn't. Good, I said. Let him rot. I hung up. The house was quiet. The sirens were gone. The press had left to chase Bella or follow the police convoy. I was alone in my castle. It was empty, but it felt full. It was filled with the clean, crisp air of truth. I looked at the spot on the rug where Richard had fallen. I would have to replace that rug, and the furniture, and the drapes. I would burn it all and start fresh. But first, I had a promise to keep. I stood up, grabbed my keys, the keys to my Range Rover, which I had parked down the street, and walked out the back door. I was going to Connecticut. I was going to eat pizza with my daughter, and for the first time in a long time, I was going to sleep without one eye open. The fake empire had crumbled, the queen had returned, and she had a lot of work to do. 3 months, 90 days, that is how long it takes for a scandal to turn into a statistic, and for a ruined life to become a footnote in the business section of the New York Times. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my corner office on the 45th floor, looking down at the island of Manhattan. The city looked like a circuit board from up here, buzzing with energy, indifferent to the individual tragedies playing out on its streets. Behind me, the office was silent. The name on the glass door had been changed. It no longer read Vanguard Systems. It read Phoenix Technologies. We had rebranded. We had scrubbed the internet. We had erased every digital fingerprint Richard had ever left on the company. It cost me $5 million in marketing and PR to cleanse the stain of his tenure. But it was worth every penny. The stock was trading at an all-time high. The market, it turned out, loved a survivor story almost as much as it loved a quarterly profit. Richard. I checked my watch. It was 2 p.m. I had an appointment, one that I had dragged my feet on for weeks, but my lawyers insisted was necessary to close the final loop of the asset seizure. I took the elevator down to the private garage. I did not take a driver. I drove myself. I needed the control. The drive to the correctional facility in upstate New York took 2 hours. The landscape changed from the steel canyons of the city to the gray, barren trees of late autumn. It was fitting. Everything was dying to be reborn in the spring. The facility was a sprawling complex of concrete and razor wire. It smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. I checked my bag at the security gate. I walked through the metal detector. I sat in the visiting room, on a hard metal stool bolted to the floor, behind a thick pane of plexiglass. When they brought Richard out, I almost didn't recognize him. It had only been 3 months, but he had aged 10 years. His hair, once carefully dyed and styled, was gray and thinning. His skin was sallow, deprived of sunlight and expensive facials. He wore a bright orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost weight. He looked small. He sat down on the other side of the glass. He picked up the phone. I picked up mine. "Elizabeth," he rasped. His voice was hoarse. "You came." I had to bring the papers. "Richard," I said, my voice neutral. "The judge ordered the restitution. You owe the company, and me personally, $18 million. You obviously do not have it." "I have nothing," he whispered. "You know I have nothing. You took it all." "I took back what was mine," I corrected. "But there is still the matter of your remaining shares, the 0.5% you held in your private name. They are illiquid while you are incarcerated, but they are an annoyance on my cap table. I am triggering the buyout clause in our original partnership agreement." I slid a piece of paper through the slot at the bottom of the glass. "Sign here," I said. Richard looked at the paper. His hands were shaking. "What are you paying me for them? They are worth at least $200,000. "Read the valuation," I said. He squinted. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. $1? This says $1? That is the value of your contribution to the company after we deduct the damages you caused," I said. "And frankly, I think I am overpaying." "I can't sign this," he begged, tears welling in his eyes. "Elizabeth, I need money for the commissary. I need to buy soap. I need to buy ramen. The food here is inedible. Please, give me something, anything." I reached into my purse. I pulled out a single, crisp $1 bill. I smoothed it out on the metal counter. "Sign the paper." "Richard," I said. "And you get the dollar." He stared at the bill. It was a humiliation so profound it seemed to physically crush him. He looked at me, searching for a trace of the woman who used to straighten his tie, the woman who used to hold his hand. He found only the CEO. He picked up the pen. He signed. I pulled the document back through the slot. I pushed the dollar bill through. He grabbed it like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. "Is that it?" he asked, his voice breaking. 15 years. Elizabeth, I got 15 years old. I will be 60 when I get out. My life is over. "You made a plea deal," I reminded him. "You avoided 30 years. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" He laughed, a bitter, jagged sound. "I am in hell, and you look like you just came from a spa." I stood up. I smoothed the lapels of my coat. "I have to go. Richard, I have a board meeting at 5. "Wait." He pressed his hand against the glass. "Elizabeth, do you ever think about us? About the good times before the money?" I looked at his hand on the glass. I remembered how that hand had felt when he slapped Bella. I remembered how it had looked holding the pen to sign away my home. "No," I said. "I don't." I turned to leave. "Elizabeth," he shouted into the receiver. "It's awful in here. The coffee tastes like mud." I stopped. I turned back slowly. A small, cold smile played on my lips. "Is that so?" I said. "Well, Richard, you once told me to make coffee because you hated delay. I hope the coffee in there suits your palate. It sounds like it has the distinct flavor of consequences." I hung up the phone. I walked away. I did not look back. The drive back to the city was lighter. The final string was cut. As I drove, I thought about Bella. My private investigator had sent me a report yesterday. It was brief, but satisfying. After the scandal broke, Bella had become a social pariah. Her friends, fair-weather leeches, all of them had abandoned her. The internet had destroyed her reputation. No modeling agency would touch her. She had moved back to her hometown in New Jersey, to a small, cramped apartment she shared with 2 other girls. The report included a photo. It showed Bella in a stained pink uniform, pouring coffee at a roadside diner off the turnpike. She looked tired. She looked angry. And she looked like she was working very hard for minimum wage. I found the irony delicious. The woman who had thrown an apron at me was now wearing one for 12 hours a day, serving people who probably didn't even say thank you. She was living the life she had tried to mock me with. Fate, it seemed, had a sense of poetic justice. I returned to the estate just as the sun was setting. The house was different now. I had sold the furniture. I had repainted the walls. The cold, museum-like quality Richard loved was gone. It was warmer now. There were throws on the sofas. There were fresh flowers that didn't smell like funerals. Maya was in the kitchen. She was making pizza dough. She had flour on her nose and was singing along to a pop song blasting from the speaker. She looked up when I walked in. "Mom, you are back. Did you finish the work?" "I did," I said, walking over and kissing her floured forehead. "It is all done. No more lawyers, no more courts." "Good," she said decisively, "because we have to pack. Our flight is tomorrow." "I know," I smiled. "Paris, just you and me." "And no phones?" Maya asked, pointing a dough-covered finger at me. "No work phones," I corrected. "I need my personal phone to take pictures of you eating croissants." She giggled. "Deal." I watched her knead the dough. She was happy. She was safe. The shadow of the last few months had lifted from her. She was a child again, not a spy. "Mom," she asked, pausing, "are we ever going to talk about him again?" "No," I said firmly. "He is in the past. We are the future." "Okay," she went back to her dough. "I like that." I walked over to the fireplace in the living room. The fire was crackling, casting a warm orange glow over the room. I was holding a small bundle in my hand. It was the gray uniform dress and the white apron I had worn as Eliza. I had kept them in a box. a reminder of the woman I had to become to save myself. But I didn't need the reminder anymore. I unfolded the apron. It was stained with the coffee Richard had thrown at me. It was stiff with the memory of servitude. I tossed it into the fire. The flames licked at the fabric. It curled, blackened, and then burst into bright orange light. I watched it turn to ash. I watched Eliza disappear up the chimney in a plume of smoke. There was one last thing, one last secret I had kept. Even from the reader. Until this very moment. You see, everyone thought my 15-day trip before the homecoming was just about investigating Richard's theft. They thought I was just reacting, playing defense. But I am Elizabeth Ashburn. I do not play defense. I play to wipe the board clean. While I was in the Caymans tracking Richard's money, I wasn't just looking at bank accounts. I was looking at the source of the corruption. I was looking at Apex Dynamics, the company owned by Marcus Vane Bella's father, the company Richard was selling my secrets to. I discovered that Marcus Vane was over-leveraged. He had bet everything on acquiring my technology to save his failing hardware division. He was vulnerable. So, while Richard was busy buying jewelry for Bella and planning his escape, I was busy having quiet, ruthless meetings with Vane's creditors. I bought his debt, all of it, 3 days ago, while Richard was being processed into general population. I executed the foreclosure clause on Apex Dynamics. I didn't just sue them, I swallowed them. As of this morning, Apex Dynamics is a wholly owned subsidiary of Phoenix Technologies. Marcus Vane is bankrupt. The mansion Bella grew up in. It belongs to the bank now. The trust fund she thought would save her. It was drained to pay the legal fees I buried her father under. I didn't just defeat Richard. I bought the family of the woman who tried to replace me. I turned her inheritance into my quarterly bonus. I watched the last spark of the apron die out in the fireplace. The room was warm. My daughter was laughing in the kitchen. My company was safe. And my enemies were not just defeated, they were erased. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark lawn. The reflection in the glass showed a woman who looked tired. Yes, but unbreakable. They made a mistake. They thought a wife was a soft thing. They thought a mother was a weak thing. They thought they could walk into a lion's den and treat the lioness like a house cat. They woke a sleeping wife, but they found themselves facing a queen who had finally opened her eyes. And the queen. She never sets the table. She owns the kingdom. Thank you so much for listening to this story of revenge and justice. I hope you enjoyed Elizabeth's journey from betrayal to absolute victory. I would love to hear from you. Please comment below and let me know where you are listening from. Are you in New York, London, Tokyo, or somewhere else entirely? Let's connect in the comments section. And if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Sweet Rose Drama channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people who need a little bit of satisfying drama in their lives. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, stay strong and never let anyone underestimate you.